You know that feeling when your entire world shifts in a single moment? When everything you thought you knew just crumbles. I'm Sarah. I'm 28 years old. And 3 years ago, at what should have been one of the happiest nights of my life, I learned a truth that would change everything. This is the story of my engagement party. The night I thought I was celebrating forever with the man I loved. The night his mother handed me a check and begged me to disappear. But let me start from the beginning, because to understand what happened that night, you need to understand how we got there. I met Marcus at a charity gala 2 years before our engagement. I know, sounds like something out of a movie, right? I was there representing the nonprofit I worked for, a youth literacy program in underserved communities. We've been invited because we were one of the organizations receiving funding that year. I was wearing a dress I'd borrowed from my roommate, trying not to spill champagne on it, when this man just appeared next to me. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said. And he was right. I was completely out of my element. These were my people. I grew up in a small apartment with my mom, a single parent who worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. She passed away from cancer when I was 23. These galas, these people with their designer everything, it wasn't my world. But Marcus, he made it feel less intimidating. We talked for hours that night. About books. We both loved Toni Morrison. About dreams. He wanted to expand his family's business into sustainable technology. I wanted to open literacy centers across the country. About food. We both had an inexplicable obsession with trying weird ethnic restaurants. He didn't tell me until our 3rd date that his family was, well, wealthy. Like, seriously wealthy. The kind of wealth that comes with old money, investment portfolios, and a last name people recognize. The Ashfords. His father ran a commercial real estate empire. His mother came from a family of lawyers and judges. Marcus himself was VP of development at his father's company, being groomed to take over someday. When he finally told me, I panicked. I almost ended things right there. "Sarah," he said, holding my hands across the table at this tiny Thai place we loved. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know me first. Not my last name, not my bank account, just me." And that's when I knew I was falling in love with him. Meeting Marcus's parents was an experience. His father, Richard Ashford, was exactly what you'd expect. Tall, distinguished, with silver hair and a handshake that felt like a business transaction. He asked about my education. I went to state school on scholarships, my family background, my career trajectory. It felt less like a family dinner and more like a job interview. But his mother? Catherine Ashford was something else entirely. She was beautiful in that preserved Upper East Side way. Perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was polite. So polite it felt like ice. "Sarah, what a unique name," she said, as if my name offended her somehow. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Ashford," I replied, determined to make a good impression. "Please call me Catherine." She smiled, but her eyes were assessing me like I was a piece of furniture she was considering for her home. And finding me lacking, throughout dinner, she asked questions, subtle ones, about my mother. Oh, how unfortunate, and no father in the picture. About where I lived, Brooklyn, how bohemian about my job, that's sweet, working with underprivileged children. Every compliment had a barb hidden in it. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, trying to reassure me. After dinner, he apologized. "She's just protective," he said. "She'll warm up. I promise." Spoiler alert, she didn't. Over the next year and a half, I tried everything. I dressed more conservatively when visiting their home. I researched topics she cared about: art, opera, philanthropy, so we'd have things to discuss. I volunteered at her charity events. Nothing worked. Catherine was never openly hostile. That would be too obvious, too déclassé for someone like her. Instead, it was 1,000 tiny cuts. She'd introduce me to her friends as Marcus's friend Sarah. She'd make comments about how Marcus's ex-girlfriend, Ainsley, from a good family, was doing so well in her career. She'd suggest restaurants she knew I couldn't afford, and then insist on paying in a way that made me feel like charity. Marcus can do better. I overheard her tell Richard once, thinking I was out of earshot. This girl is just after his money. I cried in Marcus's arms that night, but he convinced me she'd come around, that when we got married, when she saw how happy I made him, she'd accept me. I wanted to believe him so badly. Marcus proposed on a random Tuesday in April. We'd gone to Central Park to watch the cherry blossoms, one of my favorite spring rituals. We were walking, eating ice cream, laughing about something ridiculous, when he just stopped. "Sarah," he said, "I can't imagine my life without you." And then he got down on one knee, right there on the path, with tourists and joggers and dog walkers streaming past us. The ring was beautiful, simple, elegant, exactly what I would have chosen. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. He knew I'd always thought traditional engagement rings were wasteful and preferred colored stones. "It reminded me of your eyes," he said. "Will you marry me?" I said yes through tears. Of course I said yes. The people around us cheered. Someone took a photo. It was perfect. That night, we called his parents to share the news. Richard congratulated us and immediately started talking about wedding venues and dates. Catherine's response was more measured. "How wonderful," she said in that flat tone that could mean anything. "We should celebrate properly. Let's host an engagement party. 2 weeks from Saturday. I'll handle everything." Marcus was thrilled. "See, she's making an effort." I wasn't so sure, but I tried to be optimistic. Maybe this really was the turning point. The engagement party was held at the Ashford Estate in Connecticut. Yes, estate. The house had a name, Willowbrook. It had 30 rooms, a guest house, and gardens that required a full-time staff to maintain. Catherine had planned everything. The invitations, heavy cream cardstock with embossed gold lettering. The flowers, white roses and peonies everywhere. The catering, some exclusive company that normally required 6 months' notice. She'd even selected my dress. Well, selected is generous. She had 3 designer dresses delivered to my apartment with a note. "I thought these might be appropriate for the occasion. Choose whichever you prefer. Catherine." The subtext was clear. "Your taste isn't good enough for this event." I chose the navy blue one. Simple, elegant, not too flashy. I wanted to blend in, not stand out. The party itself was overwhelming. There were at least 150 people there. Family, friends, business associates, Marcus's prep school buddies, distant relatives I'd never met. I knew maybe 10 people there, including Marcus. Everyone was polite to me. So polite. But I could feel them assessing me, just like Catherine had that first dinner, calculating whether I belonged. "How did you two meet again?" one woman asked, diamond earrings glittering. "What do your parents do?" asked another, already judging my answer. "Where did you summer as a child?" someone else inquired, as if everyone summered somewhere. I smiled through it all. I drank champagne I couldn't taste. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I stood next to Marcus and played the part of the happy bride-to-be. Catherine had seated us at a table on the terrace for dinner. The sun was setting, casting everything in golden light. It should have been beautiful. It should have been perfect. Marcus gave a speech, talking about how he'd fallen in love with me, how I'd changed his life, how excited he was for our future. His father raised a glass to us, and then Catherine stood to speak. When Marcus first told us about Sarah, she began, her voice warm, but her eyes cold. I'll admit I was surprised. She wasn't what we expected. The crowd tittered politely. But over these past 2 years, I've come to understand what Marcus sees in her. She's determined, ambitious in her own way, and she clearly cares very deeply for my son. Every word felt like a backhanded compliment. I kept my smile fixed in place. "So let's raise our glasses to Marcus and Sarah. May they find happiness, however that looks for them." The toast felt ominous, though I couldn't quite say why. After dinner, people mingled. I was standing with some of Marcus's college friends, trying to keep up with the conversation about crypto investments I didn't understand, when I felt a hand on my elbow. "Catherine." "Sarah." "Dear, could I speak with you for a moment?" "Privately." My stomach dropped, but I smiled. "Of course." She led me away from the party, through the garden, to a small gazebo overlooking the pond. The music and laughter from the party faded to a distant hum. "I wanted to give you your engagement gift," she said, reaching into her clutch. Something from me. Personally. She pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored, expensive paper. My name written on it in elegant script. I opened it, confused. Inside was a check. I looked at the amount. $2 million. My hand started shaking. I don't understand, I whispered. Catherine's expression didn't change. Still that perfect, polite mask. I think you do, she said quietly. Take the money. Leave tonight. Disappear from Marcus's life. Tell him whatever you need to. That you realize you weren't ready. That you want different things. That you met someone else. I don't care. But in this engagement, I stared at her, my mind struggling to process what was happening. You're trying to pay me to leave your son? I'm offering you an opportunity, she corrected. $2 million. More money than you've ever had. More than you'll likely ever have working at your little nonprofit. Enough to pay off any debts, buy a home, live comfortably for years. All you have to do is walk away. My first instinct was anger. Ha! Righteous fury. How dare you, I started. But Catherine held up a hand. Before you refuse, let me explain something. I know what you're thinking. That I'm a terrible person. That I don't care about Marcus's happiness. That I'm some classist snob who can't stand the thought of my son marrying beneath him. She paused, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw something real in her expression. Something that looked almost like pain. You're right about some of that, she continued. I am protective of my son. I do think you come from different worlds. But that's not why I'm doing this. She sat down on the gazebo bench, suddenly looking older, more fragile. 28 years ago, I was you, she said quietly. I froze. I was 24, working as a paralegal. I met Richard at a firm event. He was 29, being groomed to take over his father's company. I was not what his family had in mind. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. She looked out at the pond, lost in memory. Richard's mother hated me. Treated me exactly how you feel I've been treating you. She tried to pay me off too, actually. $50,000. A fortune to me then. I threw it back in her face. Told Richard about it. We eloped 3 months later, just to spite her. So you understand, I said, my voice shaking. You understand what this feels like. And you're doing it anyway. Catherine turned to look at me and her eyes were sad. Genuinely sad. I understand exactly what this feels like. That's why I'm doing it. That doesn't make any sense. Richard's family never accepted me. Sarah. Never. Not when we married. Not when I gave birth to Marcus. Not in the 30 years since. I'm still the girl from Queens who trapped their golden boy. Every family event. Every business dinner. Every charity gala. I'm tolerated. Not welcomed. Never welcomed. Her voice cracked slightly. I became everything they wanted me to be. I changed my accent, my wardrobe, my interests. I volunteered on the right boards, made friends with the right people, said the right things. I erased the person I was and built this perfect automaton in her place. And you know what? It still wasn't enough. It will never be enough. I didn't know what to say. The worst part, Catherine continued. I lost myself. Completely. I don't even know who I would have been if I'd walked away that night Richard proposed. Maybe I would have been happier. Maybe I would have found someone who loved me for who I actually was, not who I could become. Maybe I would have had a life that was actually mine. She reached out and took my hand. I was too shocked to pull away. I've watched you this past year, Sarah. Watched you trying so hard to fit in. Wearing clothes that aren't your style. Discussing topics you don't care about. Smiling through comments that hurt. You're doing exactly what I did. And it's only going to get worse after you marry him. Marcus isn't like that, I protested weakly. He loves me for who I am. Does he? Catherine asked gently. Or does he love the version of you that fits into his world? Have you noticed how he doesn't take you to the restaurants you loved when you first met anymore? How he started suggesting you might want to reassess your career goals? How he corrects your grammar sometimes, so subtly you might not even notice? I had noticed. God help me. I had noticed all of those things. I just told myself it didn't matter. This family, this world, it swallows people like us, Catherine said. It takes who you are and grinds it down until you fit their mold. And one day you'll wake up, 30 years from now, and you won't recognize yourself in the mirror. You'll be Mrs. Marcus Ashford. You'll be perfect and polished and empty. Just like me. Tears were rolling down my cheeks now. I've hated myself for years for not being brave enough to walk away, Catherine said. For choosing money and status over myself. I'm trying to give you the choice I wish someone had given me. Take the money. Build the life you actually want. Find someone who doesn't require you to be anything other than exactly who you are. She pressed the check into my hand. Please, Sarah, leave now. For your own sake. Don't make my mistake. I stood there in that gazebo, holding a check for $2 million, while the woman I'd thought hated me confessed that she was trying to save me from her own fate. Part of me wanted to throw the check back at her, to storm back to the party, tell Marcus everything, and demand he choose between his family and me. But a larger part of me understood. I thought about the past year, really thought about it. I thought about how I'd stopped wearing my vintage band t-shirts because Marcus said they were a bit juvenile. How I'd quit the book club I loved because the meetings conflicted with his family dinners. How I'd been subtly encouraged to consider more prestigious job opportunities instead of the work I was passionate about. I thought about the future Catherine was describing. Years of trying to be good enough, of molding myself into someone I wasn't, of losing myself piece by piece until nothing remained but an empty shell in expensive clothes. I thought about my mother. How she'd always told me to never shrink myself for anyone. How she'd worked herself to the bone so I could have opportunities, could be whoever I wanted to be. What would she think of who I'd been becoming? I need to talk to Marcus, I finally said. Catherine nodded. I expected you would. But Sarah, really think about what you want to say. Think about whether you're ready to fight this battle for the rest of your life. Because it will be a battle. Every day. Against his family. Against his world. Maybe eventually against him. She stood up and walked back toward the party, leaving me alone with the check and my thoughts. I stood there for maybe 20 minutes, watching the sun finish setting, watching the stars start to appear, trying to figure out what I wanted. Not what Marcus wanted. Not what Catherine wanted. Not what was expected of me. What did Sarah want? And that's when I realized I didn't know anymore. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost touch with that part of myself. I walked back to the party, found Marcus talking with some business colleagues, animated and happy. He saw me and his face lit up. There you are. I was wondering where you'd gone. Come meet David. He's interested in funding your literacy program. And there it was, the perfect example of what my life would be. Marcus using his connections to help me, yes, but also making my dreams dependent on his world, tying me ever tighter into a system that would slowly crush the real me. Marcus, I said, can we talk? Privately. He excused us and we walked to a quiet corner of the terrace. What's wrong? He asked, concerned. You look upset. I showed him the check. His face went through several emotions: confusion, recognition, anger, horror. She didn't, he breathed. Tell me my mother didn't try to buy you off. She did, I said quietly. But Marcus, I think we need to talk about why. I told him everything. What his mother had said. Her story. Her fears for me. And then I told him what I'd realized. I've changed, I said. So much. And I didn't even notice it happening. I'm not sure I like who I'm becoming. I'm not sure that person is even me anymore. Sarah, I love you, Marcus said. Exactly as you are. Do you? I asked. Or, do you love the version of me that fits into your life? Because those aren't the same thing, Marcus. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. I could see him actually thinking about it. Really thinking. I don't want you to change, he finally said. But I have to, I replied. To be part of your world, I have to change. And maybe some of those changes are good. Growth, maturity, whatever. But some of them feel like I'm erasing myself. We sat in silence for a long moment. What do you want to do? Marcus asked quietly, and I realized, I knew. I want to leave, I said. Not forever, maybe, but for now. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be who everyone expects me to be. I need to find myself again. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Are you breaking up with me? I'm asking for a pause, I said. I love you, but I can't marry you right now. Not until I'm sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. Not until I know that I'm choosing you. Not choosing escape or security or validation. I took off the engagement ring and placed it in his hand. If we're meant to be together, we'll find our way back to each other, I said. But I can't do this right now. I left the party that night, walked down that long driveway with my borrowed dress and my broken heart and a check for $2 million I still hadn't decided whether to keep. Catherine was standing by the front gate. She didn't say anything, just nodded at me. One woman who'd lost herself to another who was trying not to. So what happened? Did I keep the money? I did. I deposited that check and I used it to start a foundation. The Sarah Chun Educational Initiative. We've opened 5 literacy centers so far. We serve over 2,000 kids. I kept my mother's maiden name for it. Chun, a reminder of where I came from. Did I ever see Marcus again? Once. 6 months after the engagement party. We met for coffee. He'd started therapy. Was really thinking about his family dynamics and what he wanted. We talked for hours. It was good. Painful but good. He's actually engaged now. To a woman named Jennifer who works in tech. From what I've seen on social media, she seems great. Strong. Not willing to bend to fit anyone's mold. I hope he's happy. I really do. And me, I'm still figuring it out. Still finding myself again. Dating occasionally, but in no rush. Building my nonprofit. Living in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn I actually chose. Wearing band t-shirts and going to weird restaurants. Being myself. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd thrown that check in Catherine's face and married Marcus anyway. Maybe we would have been happy. Maybe love would have been enough. But maybe not. And I'd rather spend my life building something real, even if it's messy and uncertain, than living someone else's perfect life. That's my story. The night everything changed. The check that bought my freedom. The mother-in-law who tried to save me. Was she right? Was she wrong? I still don't know. Maybe I never will. But I do know this, I'm glad I left. I'm glad I chose myself. Thanks for listening.